Hello, you wonderful people. Good evening. Hello. A massive welcome. A massive, massive welcome. How are you? Let me know how you are this lovely, lovely evening. Welcome. Tonight, guess what we're learning about? Guess what we're learning about? Ladies and gentlemen, lots of people. Grazilla Porter. Hello. Yes, there's lots to learn this evening. Baby Noetel. Hello. Manisco. Welcome. Steffi. Welcome. Lots of people. Great idea, Roy. I really like her novels and her attitude. She was ironic and used psychological introspection that made her a great novelist. Hi, Sarah. Hello. Welcome. Good evening. A very, very good evening. This is a really intriguing class we've got picked tonight because tonight we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing Learning English with Jane Austen. Now, I will say, as a disclaimer, I'm sorry to say she won't be joining us this evening, but she will in spirit, kind of. She's been dead for quite some time, but these videos kind of always annoy me a little bit when Learn English with Jane Austen. And I'm like, Jane Austen's past, I'm afraid. But tonight we're going to be learning from an excerpt from Hello. Hello. Let me just send a little message to tell everybody that we are. Where is it? Let me just send a little message to say to everybody we're live. Oh dear, what's gone off here? That's it. That's what we want. So, welcome one and all. There are 12 people. Why is it going so crazy this night? I don't know what's going on, but let me just send a quick message. We are live. There we go. It's gone. It's sent. It's sent. There we are. Welcome one and all. We are learning tonight with Jane Austen. English with Jane Austen. Some of you will, well, hopefully most of you know who she is. Otherwise, this is going to be a very intriguing lesson. Now, just to let you know, my name is Roy, your British English teacher, and this lesson will be live for 1 week. So please do watch it. There's going to be lots to learn this evening, but please do keep watching this lesson. But this lesson will be live for 1 entire week. After that, it will be joining the British English Lesson Library. I've corrected the spelling. It's no longer language library. The British English Lesson Library is an exclusive kind of collection of all the live classes I've ever done, plus the English Right Now community, which is a WhatsApp group. And you can join that by clicking on the link somewhere. Of course, why would I ever have links when I need them? We'll find the links to you shortly, hopefully, but you can find a link. I'll put it in the description, but there's so much to talk about this evening. In fact, there is a link on this class. It's not going well right now, but I need to find the class. Oh dear. We're having a few technological issues this evening, but there we go. So, the English Right Now community is a WhatsApp group of like-minded students from around the world who are learning English and loving English the same as you. So if that sounds pretty good, you can click on the link when I eventually find a link. Ridiculous that I haven't got a link. Maybe I have. Maybe I have. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I've achieved greatness. I found a link. There we go. So in that link, you can find all the information about the British English Lesson Library, which is a monthly subscription until you cancel. So you can be with us for as long as you want. And it includes the British English Lesson Library, which there's over about 40 hours already worth of content. But of course, tonight, the focus is on a lady called Jane Austen. Some people will love her. I've already read some people, not to their taste. But what we can say is she was a prolific writer. Well, maybe not prolific. She wrote 6 books, but she was a very famous writer of her time. This saying is something we're going to explain. I want to say, first of all, look at the pronunciation of Austen. We make it sound more like it's got an I in that final syllable, Austen, but we spell it with an E. So it should say Austen, but it's more like Austen. Jane Austen. Some people say Austen, but personally, I think that sounds a bit forced. So let's talk about some facts about Jane Austen. So Jane Austen was born on December the 16th, 1775 in Steventon in Hampshire. I'm stressing that it's Hampshire because that's Hampshire in southern England. I live very close to Hampshire. I live up, just I can see Hampshire from my window. I know some of you do live uh, exactly like Austin Mini. Yeah, and I've got a friend called Austin. And I stress that it's Hampshire. So if you go on a kind of cultural exchange where you visit the literary sites, don't confuse it and go to Steventon in Oxfordshire. So she's very much from Hampshire. I know some of us here tonight also live in Hampshire. And what's really fascinating about her, I mean, we're talking that she was born in 1775. That's a long, long time ago. What's that? 350, 250 years ago. 250 years ago. And at that time, school was not compulsory, especially, I'm sorry to say, for females. Females, we can talk about this a little bit later on. Some of the topics that she discusses and she describes may be slightly distasteful to some of you these days. The idea of women not working and not being privileged to have an education and things like this. But it's very much of its time. We always need to state that. And I'll be honest about, well, we'll talk a bit about this in a moment. She came from a family that valued learning. This is really important. Although formal schooling wasn't required at the time, Jane Austen's parents believed in education. Both she and her sister Cassandra, they were sent to the girls' boarding school. Now, just as a bit of information, apparently they nearly died while they were there, but this was a rare opportunity, not the dying part, but the schooling, the boarding school. Boarding school is where we live in the school, where we sleep at the school, boarding school. And it was a rare opportunity for women in that era. And Austen was actually the seventh of 8 children. She had 6 brothers: James, George, Francis, Charles, Henry, and Edward. And she had one older sister, Cassandra. And she was very, very close to her older sister. So, a few more facts about Jane Austen. I've got a few here. Her early novels were actually published without her name. So they were her first 4 books were released anonymously, and in fact, those 4 books. Why is my phone going crazy? Don't know what's going on over there. But her first 4 books were released while she was alive. She only wrote 6 books in total. Well, finished 6 books. 2 of them were released after she died. But the 4 books, most of them were released anonymously. And but by the time sort of it became a kind of open secret who she was. And that's partly because of her brother Henry, who couldn't help, he loved the secret. He couldn't help but tell people. And her famous titles, well, they actually weren't the original titles. This is something. So Sense and Sensibility, as you probably know, was written as Eleanor and Marianne. And it was credited, the writer was by a lady, which I think is lovely. And her next novel, Pride and Prejudice, which wasn't the original title either, it was originally titled First Impressions, which I think Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice are far better titles than Eleanor and Marianne and First Impressions. I think First Impressions, yeah, I'm glad she changed the title. It was originally published and credited to the writer or by the author of Sense and Sensibility. So Sense and Sensibility was by a lady, not Jane Austen. Later on, her name was added. And Pride and Prejudice was written by the author of Sense and Sensibility. I love that. And she sadly died at the age of just 41. And the cause of death remains a mystery. She died in 1817, but no doctor could determine what caused her to die. So a lot of people have speculated over the year, and her novels do reflect the pressures women faced in the time. Many of Austen's stories highlight how women were forced to rely on marriage to gain social status and financial security, which I think some of you have already said you found a bit distasteful, but this was of the time. And it was a lot of people would say it was a quiet but powerful critique of her society. In fact, well, we need to say this. I mean, she was a romantic writer. She was engaged once, but only for a few hours. So, in fact, somebody proposed and she accepted. It was in 1802. It was a gentleman called Harris Bigwither. What a name. Harris Bigwither. And after a long, restless night, an uncomfortable night where she didn't sleep, she changed her mind. And she ended the engagement the next morning and left the house. So she was engaged for a few hours, woke up and thought it was a terrible idea. And in fact, neither she nor her sister Cassandra ever married. They supported each other, they exchanged letters, and they had a deep, lifelong bond, but they never got married, which I think is very fascinating. For a woman who wrote a lot about marriage, I think it tells us really what she thought of the critique of her society if she never bothered to get married, if she couldn't bring herself to get married. In fact, some of the people say she advised people that you should only get married for love, and others said she saw it as a business deal. Um, Either way, she is a famous critique of her time. And then let's talk very quickly about Pride and Prejudice. So it was originally titled, as I say, First Impressions. And she wrote the novel in 1796, 1797, around then. And then she heavily revised it over the years and eventually published it 16, 17 years later in 1813. So she eventually published it as Pride and Prejudice in 1813. So she wrote it in 1796 or 1797, depending on who you check. And as I said earlier, it was published anonymously by the author of Sense and Sensibility. And it opens with one of the most famous lines in literature, which is what we're going to be talking about this evening. It's a witty line that sets the tone for the entire story. And that's something we need to focus on because she was very satirical. And this story was more than just romance. It's often seen as a love story. The novel, but it's not just a love story. It explores themes of class, reputation, family, gender roles, and personal growth, especially through Elizabeth Bennet's sharp observations and independent spirit. And it wasn't. It was. This apparently was Austen's most popular novel during her lifetime, but she was never really popular during her lifetime. And Elizabeth Bennet, yes, that's the line we're going to be looking at shortly. Elizabeth Bennet was a revolutionary heroine. At the time when women in fiction were very passive and overly popular, Elizabeth stood out. She was clever, she was outspoken, and unafraid to challenge social expectations, especially when she turned down not one, but two marriage proposals. So for everybody who said, oh, no, it's all about love and women getting married for convenience and not being able to work. I mean, Elizabeth Bennet, for some at the time, I mean, we're talking, 250 years ago, to talk about such things as a kind of woman refusing to get married and challenging social expectations of the time. It was quite a strong theme. Some these days may think, well, it's a bit dated and it's a bit rubbish by today's standards, but you need to judge it by its time. And also, Mr. Darcy kind of became the blueprint for this kind of brooding romantic hero. So Darcy is this kind of proud, reserved, socially awkward character. But his inner transformation over the course of the novel turned him into the archetype for the complex, misunderstood romantic leads for generations to come. Still to this day, a lot of British men stereotyped with the Darcy idea, this kind of awkward, you've got to look at Mark Darcy and Bridget Jones. Of course, that's a direct reference, but Hugh Grant has made an entire career on being Mr. Darcy. He's changed now. He's fantastically interesting as an actor now. And it's inspired endless adaptations and spin-offs. There's been BBC dramas, Hollywood films, to books like Bridget Jones' Diary, and also, some of you might not know this one, but Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. It's a true story. It's a real film. I must admit, I quite enjoy it. It's got zombies in it. Basically, somebody rewrote Pride and Prejudice with zombies. There's also Sense and Sensibility and sea monsters. Lovely. And it's still changing lives over 200 years later. More than 2 centuries after it was published, Pride and Prejudice continues to resonate with readers around the world for its wit, emotional depth, and its sort of timeless portrayal of love, pride, and personal growth. And it also gives us a fascinating insight into history, a little bit like Dickens. Not everybody loves Dickens. Some people find it hard going. But Dickens also paints a fantastic picture of life in England at that time. Also, he lived in Portsmouth. So I imagine maybe they met, possibly. Who knows? He was born in Chatham, I believe, but there you go. And this is the expression I keep using. It's of its time. It's of its time. It is very much of its time. The themes discussed, the history discussed, the social roles discussed are from 250 years ago. Jane Austen, I will give her her credit. In terms of writing, it is still very readable. It isn't difficult to. A lot of the vocabulary used is still pretty. I mean, it's really well written, but it's still very much understandable in modern English, not too archaic in terms of language. That doesn't always transfer in terms of even poetry written 100 years ago. I was reading. I was thinking about doing a poem tonight called Dolce e Decorum Me by Wilfred Owen. It's a war poem, but some of the language used is a bit it's a bit old fashioned and very much out of date. While it is of its time, the themes discussed, and you may not like the themes discussed, it is a fascinating glimpse into history. So, but it is of its time. The alternative to this would be ahead of its time, where people do or say things that are not appropriate for that period of time. You could say somebody like Galileo. Galileo Galilei was ahead of his time. Things like this. Leonardo da Vinci was possibly as ahead of his time. Well, maybe Einstein as well. But somebody or does something or says something that is not appropriate for that period, but very progressive. So this is very much of its time. We can't deny that. So, as Steffi has already said, it is one of the most universally. Nearly said it then, didn't I? It is one of the most famous. I love that poem. It is a brilliant poem. Very difficult for certain. Yeah, I think it definitely I would like to cover it. I mean, this is something I've been talking with the British English Lesson Library. Wouldn't it be wonderful to talk more about poetry analysis? But something I'm going to put out there for the members. I know you were talking about it. If you're still interested, let me know. But I'm always looking for suggestions for the exclusive content. Maybe we could do some poetry analysis. But this is one of the most sort of famous opening lines of a novel ever. And there's some really iconic ones, but this is definitely up there. I always remember George Orwell's one. But anyway, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. What a line. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune, must be in want of a wife. Wow. Okay, Jane Austen is known for her wit. So this is a witty kind of joke to start the novel. So it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's not necessarily saying, not necessarily she's being serious, but it could be a bit of a joke. Oh, a truth. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. We can read this in multiple ways. It's a fascinating line. And I think this is why it's become so fascinating. Because what did she mean? In what way is it to be taken? Is it to be taken slightly serious, satirically, mockingly, completely mockingly? Is it meant to be the tone of voice is everything? It's the same way we analyze Shakespeare. We know she wasn't overly keen on the idea of marriage and she challenged these things. And absolutely, this is kind of a sarcastic point, or maybe an ironic point. But I'd say sarcasm here because she's attacking the institution of marriage and maybe these kind of single wealthy men. It's a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. But we're going to take this line apart. Later on, we've got something that we can look at more literally. But there you go. So I rewrote it. In my modern English. Now, I have already said this is of its time, but in terms of writing, it's not too bad. Oh, it's commonly accepted that a rich single man wants to get married. I don't think I have the same power as Jane Austen. But notice there, she says it is a truth universally acknowledged. Now, she's kind of used an inversion there. She's quite famous for doing this. She kind of puts the thing there, and it is a literary style to put the noun there before The rest, we should probably say these days, it's a universally acknowledged truth. I was going to say it's commonly accepted. I don't necessarily think that that does it justice. So I was going to say, in light of a kind of um, the same satirical tone, I'd probably say it's a fact. It's a fact. Oh, it's a fact that all rich men want to get married. All rich men want. Oh, it's a fact. All rich men want to get married. It's a very flippant remark, isn't it? It sounds flippant when I do it like that, but I'm not necessarily doing it justice. You know, it's this same kind of witty tone. I once heard a joke um, that, and it's on the surface of it, it sounds very not very clever, but it's actually quite clever. He said, "Oh yeah, somebody made a generalization. A generalization is a comment where you kind of just say one thing about everybody, and it's kind of meant to generally sum it up, and it's quite offensive often." To sort of say, "Oh yeah, all men love football." Well, not all men love football. And somebody had said something that was slightly sexist, and this woman said, "That's a generalization. That's an absolute generalization." I think it was something like all women want to get married, and he said, "Oh, that's an absolute generalization." This person got really angry, and then another guy who heard this was quite witty, and he said, "Oh yeah, well, all women love generalizations." And she looked at him and went, "What?" And it broke her. It was brilliant. So he was saying like all women, which is a generalization in itself, love generalizations. A generalization about loving generalizations, which is completely false. Very clever. The same wit that we can see here as well. This kind of tongue-in-cheek wit. Like it's commonly accepted that a rich man wants to get married. So this, I think Jane Austen wrote it far better than my interpretation of what she said. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So we're talking about a rich man wanting a wife. So that's what we're going to work with. We're going to work with the original text. And what we're going to do over the course of this lesson is we're going to talk about the pronunciation. We're going to talk about the rhythm of the language. We're going to talk about the stress, the we're going to analyze it for speech. So let's go first of all and break it down phonemically. Now you will see there at the bottom, I have broken it down into the phonemes, but I've used the strong form of every word. So let me read it as I have transcribed it. It is a truth universally. Let me start again. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Okay. Doesn't sound my best reading there. Let me read it again, exactly the same, reading all those strong forms. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Tell me, how did it sound? Robotic, brilliant. How did it sound? Because personally, I think we need to do some tweaking. I think we need to change some things. Jane Austen, by the way, in my opinion, was ahead of her time in terms of banter. I think she used a lot of banter in her work. I think she was absolutely brilliant. That same kind of banter that I saw where an outraged person began to laugh at somebody's idiotic comment to highlight the ridiculous nature of the first person's aggression. Well, grazie Laporta, that's because I've not changed anything yet. Yes, it sounds robotic because I did. Because there's a point. Wait, Isabel, I love the fact you've picked that up. I love the fact you've picked this up. Yes, it sounds unnatural to put that as an A in there. It is a truth universally acknowledged. Ladies and gentlemen, you've known me for long enough to know that it does sound robotic, and I'm doing it on purpose. I'm sorry. Remember that English is a stress-timed language. While Italian and Spanish are syllable timed. And what that means is that not all syllables are equal. Sorry, in Italian, you have pretty equally weighted syllables. So the way I just read it there, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. The way I read it there is what we would call syllable time. Now, I'm not using the beautiful musicality of Italian or Spanish. I'm reading it quite flatly, but I'm reading it in a syllable timed way. That is the way, without intonation and with a clear accent, no Italian accent, maybe a modern British RP accent, that an Italian would read naturally, syllable timed, bringing it over. Of course, English is not syllable timed. We are what we call stress timed. And that means that there are stressed syllables and there are unstressed syllables. There are important words and there are unimportant words. And roughly the gap between each stressed word is equal. So there is a stressed word, gap, 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 stressed word, gap, 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 stressed word, gap, gap, gap. So instead, let me make it bigger. So while I had this, let's put some weak forms in. So weak forms, a lot of the words like a, of, and, that, they all have what we call weak forms. Now, when we're saying the word of, we would say of. But in a natural flowing conversation, we don't normally say that. We say of a cup of tea, or even just a cup of tea, actually, to be honest. But we use the weak form. We wouldn't naturally say a. Hey, Manuel, welcome. We wouldn't naturally say a. The fact that all of you are getting a bit like, what the hell has he done there? No intonation. Absolutely. Why a wife? Or, oh, did I translate it as, oh yeah, a wife. Yeah, it is a. So a. I did a, thank goodness. So yeah, I've pronounced a as a. And a lot of you didn't like that. So we shouldn't be. We should be pronouncing it as the schwa. You're absolutely right. So let's change those words there to a, that, a, of, a, must, be, of, a. Let's change those words. They're not really important. Let's change them to a schwa. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Much better. Must be in want. Notice that the shortened form of be is just taking that longer sound off. It's not be, it's be. Must be in want of a wife. Must be in want of a wife. Thank you. Absolutely. I pride myself in that. And that one transition of just putting in weak forms makes it sound so much better. I could go and say this all day. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune. It's hard for me to say because it's completely breaking away from my natural habits. But there's more that we can do here. Not only do we use those weak forms, we need to think about unstressed words. Unstressed words. So weak forms are one thing. So that's the kind of unstressed version of a word. But some words only have one pronunciation, be it stressed or unstressed. And then we need to think about kind of the pitch of our voice, how much we put the weight on those voices. If we stress a certain word, stress a word, if I stress the wrong word, stress a word, if I stress a word, gosh, didn't work, did it? I need to stress the correct words. This is something we will talk about how to that. So you'll notice here, I put in red the unstressed words. These are words that aren't important. They're words that you don't really need. And this will change it again. So instead of it is a truth, we say it is a truth. Instead of it is a truth, it is a truth. It is a truth. Naturally, you probably shorten it down to it's a truth. It's a truth. And change it to that unvoiced sound from an is. It's a truth. But we're reading some literature where it's quite clearly divided into it is. It is a truth. It is a truth. Notice there, I stress that word truth. It is a truth. It is a truth. It is a truth. Likewise, instead of that a, I'll say that a, that a. And it's very quick. Unstressed words tend to be a bit quicker. We do. We stress the words you need to hear, actually. So the words I've left stressed are truth, universally acknowledged, single man, possession, good fortune, want, wife. These are the words you really need to hear. And if I overstress these words just for you to hear the difference, it is a truth, universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Maybe I missed wife there a little bit. Wife. It is a truth. It is a truth, universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Now, I sound like I'm about to do a political rally. That's how politicians actually speak. A lot of them will hit the words that you need to hear when they're trying to give a rousing speech. It is time we learn English together. They overstress those certain words. That's how politicians speak. And that's why they're known for being good communicators, because they stress the words you need to hear. Oh, Eric Blair, the fantastic writer. His real name was Eric Blair, George Orwell. Just in case you think I've forgotten. So here, if I stress the wrong words and say, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a fortune must be in want of a wife. God, it goes all over the place. I stressed wife there. I can't not stress wife. Hard for me. It goes all over the place. My name is Roy. I am your British English teacher. I mean, I'm not going to joke. It does start to sound like a politician. Tonight, we're going to learn more words connected with Jane Austen. That's what stress is. Stress can highlight the words that a person really wants you to hear. And if you can copy the stress pattern of a person, by the way, you can pretty much imitate a lot of the way they speak. It's quite a thing. So what happens if I just actually take those words out? You're very welcome, Maria. You're very welcome. Those moments there with me talking like that could become a meme, couldn't they? Listen to this teacher. He's leading the English language accent. I don't know. Anyway, party. So if I've removed those unstressed words, we've suddenly got truth, universally acknowledged, single man, possession, good fortune, want wife. Still makes sense. Truth, universally acknowledged. Now, imagine if I kind of dramatize it up a bit. Truth, universally acknowledged, single man, possession, good fortune, wants wife. You still understand it. I've changed it a little bit there, but notice, remember originally, I wrote that transcription. Well, not transcription, the modern day version, sorry. It's commonly accepted that a rich man wants to get married. Right? I wrote that. Truth universally acknowledged. In fact, the word count, once we get rid of all those words, they're pretty similar. And it starts to look more like its modern day version. Truth universally accepted or universally acknowledged, single man, possession, good fortune, wants wife. And I actually did the same here, so you can see. Commonly accepted, rich single man wants marriage. I wrote married, but I think you could actually say marriage there to make it a bit more grammatically correct. Commonly accepted, rich single men wants marriage. How weird is that? I could say the full sentence. It's commonly accepted that a rich single man wants to get married. Nah. Commonly accepted, rich single man wants marriage. Change it to men, make it a bit more sense. Uh, all good, no problems. Uh, so if I change man to men and married to marriage, commonly accepted, rich single men want marriage. On wants to want. It makes perfect sense, and I've just cut out so many words. Yeah, mate, come on. It's commonly accepted, rich single men want marriage. And if I do it in the tone of Jane Austen, being a bit jokey, yeah, that's commonly accepted. A rich single men want marriage. Yeah, it's commonly accepted. Rich single men want marriage. Maybe there I'm showing that I don't like the idea that rich single men are kind of doing that, which wouldn't work. So we're going back here. These are the words that are weak forms. The simplified version would there it doesn't work as well. Certainly the traditional simplified version would be a bit worse. It would be a bit trickier. You'd have to dramatize it. But commonly accepted rich single men want marriage. That actually works as a sentence. It's very informal, but I understand the meaning completely. Commonly accepted rich single men want marriage. I mean, it doesn't flow very well, and the idea is a bit weird, but overall, it's an understandable sentence in informal English. Yes, a for man, e for men. Could do a whole lesson on that. But now let's take the pronunciation of this sentence even further. We've ripped out words, but now let's put some sounds to show you. So first of all, we need to talk about. People ask me, what is the most common type of connected speech? It's consonant to vowel linking. What is that? It's when a word ends in a consonant sound and the next word starts in a vowel sound, and the consonant sound shifts over to connect. So word ending in consonant sound moves over, bridges a gap with a vowel. Consonant to vowel, like the two words meld together. And we can see here there are some words. Can anybody find me? I've left the transcription up. Some words that end in a consonant sound and the next word starts in a vowel sound. Can anybody tell me? Let me know. Let me have a minute's rest. I've left it big for you. Is there thatter? Absolutely. Possession of. Thatter? Absolutely. Possession of. In want of. Is a. Possession of. A lot of you found possession of. Want of. Yep. Want of. Want of. Absolutely. Brilliant. So, the first word ends in a t, it. The second word starts in a is, it is. The second word ends in a z. The third word is a, it's a vowel, so it becomes more like it is a, it is a, it is a. All links together. Then we have must be, well, that's coming up. You're jumping ahead. Thatter, link as well. Man in, link. Possession of, a, possession of a. Those three words link. Want of a. So it becomes it is a, thatter, man in possession of a, want of a. So I've highlighted there. I've actually moved them over. It is a truth, universally accepted. If you can read down below, I've made it a little bit easier, because then what I've done here is I've mimicked in the text above how the sounds would move over. So you've got it is a truth, universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of the good fortune must be in want of a wife. Okay, it's broken a little bit at the top, but it actually highlights what I find is people start to break it unnaturally. It is a truth. No, it is a truth. It is a. It is a. It's almost like those three words, it is a, become one. It is a. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune, I broke it there naturally, but that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. There. Consonant to vowel linking. If you break those words individually, even if you don't stress them, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Link. We're going to do the whole text a little bit together in a little while. It is a truth. So notice it is a. It is a. It is a. It's almost like it's one word. It is a truth, universally acknowledged. There's more to say about this. That a single man in possession of a good fortune. And by the way, I'll be honest. I was trying to think. Would I stress good? Could we throw it on the pile of unstressed words? Possibly. But good fortune. Possibly. I could just drop good and make it a bit unstressed. It's not really important. Fortune does the job without the word good. I just kept it because I think you could stress it. In fact, if I make it weaker, listen to this. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. But there's more to say. But the most common form of connected speech is consonant to vowel linking. But let's move on. There we have it so far. That's what we should be dealing with, and we'll keep the phonemes down there. You do, Alessandro. Somebody's been looking at the lessons, but that is yet to come, my friend. First of all, though, we need to talk about elision. Elision is arguably the second most common form, and this is when we just remove a word, one or more sounds in a phrase or a word. There are certain sounds that are unstable and people don't like them. So here, I could only find one, really. I could only find one. And the one I found was must be. Now, when a t sound is stuck between two consonant sounds, we often delete it. So here it's between a s and a b. Just delete it. So instead of must be, which is actually really tricky, well, it's not really tricky to say, but it slows you down. It must be, get rid of it. Must be. There you go. Must be. So instead of must be in want of a wife, we suddenly get must be in want of a wife. How natural is that? So when a t or d is stuck between two consonant sounds, we often drop it. There are other rules, like the elision of h, the elision of v sometimes. There's a lot of rules. But the d and the t are the most common ones. So now we're getting something closer. There you go, I've written out at the top. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Oh, yeah, that's exactly right. But let's now talk about assimilation. Let's talk about assimilation. This is when one sound changes into another due to the effect of a neighboring sound. So basically, we spoke on the course the other day that we have regressive and progressive and coalescent assimilation. It's something I'm going to add to the Ultimate British Pronunciation, guys. It's a promise I made to Steffi. But this is when one sound changes into another sound due to the effect of a neighboring sound. So under certain conditions, sounds will change. I could find one, potentially two here. First one is more common. The word in ends in a n, and the word possession starts with a p. And normally, if we have an n and a p next together, the n changes more to that sound like a for mother. So it goes from n like in nine to like in mother. So instead of in possession, we have in possession. Im, im, in possession. I would argue that potentially the N on in next to the W on want could also go towards being a M as well. Uh, must be in want of a wife. Must be in want of a wife. But I think you could get away with in want of a wife and an in want of a wife. Have a lovely day, Rosa. Lovely to see you here. Rosa's been with me for the entire time I've had a course. I love that we still keep in touch. Makes me very happy. That's what we always say. It's a family. So I would argue that's the most common one, in possession of a wife. But let's talk about intrusion. Some of you have already said this. You said, hang on, Roy. I can see. Ah, bonsoir. Ça va? Hello. You're very welcome, Marina. I will be adding this. This will be live on here for at least a week. Pleasure to see you here, Marine. That's a really difficult sound to say, by the way, because it's a very specific sound that's not in English. So I always have to a little bit Marine. It's a very difficult. Not blowing tooting my own trumpet there, but I'm just saying it's. So sorry when I say Marine. But intrusion is when one sound is inserted between two words to make a transition easier. Most commonly, it's known for vowel-to-vowel linking. So if a word ends in a vowel sound and the next word starts in a vowel sound, we put a little sound in between to link. I found two. So I'm going to speed it up because we're getting close to the end, but universally ends in that E. Acknowledged starts in a schwa. So if I don't put a linking sound in there, it sounds like universally acknowledged. It's a bit clunky. So it should be a y sound. Universally acknowledged. Universally acknowledged. So we need a y sound. Now, interestingly there, the letter Y is written. So it's quite obvious, I would say. It's relatively obvious, but the other one isn't. You have the word be and the word in. Both of them are vowel sounds. One ends in a vowel sound, one starts in a vowel sound. Be in. Break it sounds like be in. But if I put a little y in there, it links. Be in. Be in. So there we go. Put them both in. It's often represented by a J. So we have be in. Universally acknowledged rather than universally acknowledged. So the whole sentence starts to look like that down below. So I wrote it properly up the top and I wrote it in a kind of really weird adapted Roy style English at the bottom. Hello, welcome. So instead of it, so we'll go back to the syllable times pronunciation. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So let's read it like it is down there. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. How much more natural did that sound? Now we've got all of our connected speech rules, all of our stress rules, all of our kind of other little bits and bobs. Fortune instead of fortune. How much more natural did it start to sound? For me, it starts to sound a lot better. And by the way, we've been talking about stress and connected speech, but let's also think about that stress as well very quickly before moving on to intonation. So emphasize content words, nouns, adjectives, main verbs. Reduce those function words, articles, prepositions, auxiliaries. That is the way. So in this sentence, the words I would really stress: truth, universally acknowledged, single, man, possession, good, maybe not good, fortune, want, wife. I've reduced the rest. Je vais prendre un café. There you go. That's all I've got. Maintenant. This is my French. Thank you, Sarah. This is my French from 20 years ago coming back into my head. Maybe longer, actually. It's about 30 years ago. I just remember random phrases like "Où est la banque?" which is "Where is the bank?" So I would say the tone of this formally ironic. It's formally ironic. Austen is very much critiquing. She's playfully critiquing societal norms. So how would I do this in terms of um, maybe intonation to match her? So naturally, I would say it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. That's how I would deliver it without much feeling, without much hidden meaning in terms of intonation. But how can we change it to sound a bit more like we think Jane Austen wanted to sound? Well, maybe we can have a bit of upwards intonation on the word acknowledged. It is a truth universally acknowledged. And maybe a falling ironic tone on wife, holding a bit. So it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Changes. Listen to how I changed it. A little bit of intonation. Intonation is something we can really play with. I cannot exaggerate the importance of intonation. Doing it properly if you're not being ironic, but doing it like ironically when you're doing irony. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe that's a bit too strong. Jane Austen maybe not gone that far because she would have thought, well, hang on, Roy, it's a bit too much. I don't want to be completely hated. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So, I just wanted to do another excerpt because I wanted to give you some uh, more context. We've got a few more minutes. So, this is the turning point of the novel. Before this, she was completely opposed to marriage and all that. She was very much built in her own ego. She grew absolutely ashamed of herself. Gosh. She grew absolutely ashamed of herself. Wait, let me get what we need. She grew absolutely ashamed of herself. Of neither Darcy nor Wickham could she think without feeling she had been blind, partial, prejudiced, absurd. How despicably have I acted, she cried. I, who have prided myself on my discernment. I, who have valued myself on my abilities, who have often disdained the generous candor of my sister and gratified my vanity in useless or blamable mistrust. She's having a crisis. She realizes she's been a bit of an idiot. Now, a few great bits of vocabulary from this text alone. Ashamed of yourself. If you are ashamed of yourself, you feel deep embarrassment or guilt for your own behavior or mistakes. So here, she feels embarrassed about her own mistakes. Blind. We know that blind can mean this when we can't see. It can be a medical condition. But blind here means unable to see the truth, unaware or ignorant. I was blind to his faults. It means unable to see the truth. Partial is the opposite of impartial, unfairly biased in favor of someone. This is not a word we use too much these days. Prejudiced means having a judgment or opinion formed before knowing all of the facts, especially a negative one. Like I said earlier, that person made a really obnoxious comment, and the girl referred to him as prejudiced. It was a rude, prejudiced generalization that another person that I know disarmed with sarcasm to highlight how prejudiced that person was. Absurd means ridiculous or completely unreasonable. What you're asking is absurd. Despicably Despicable. We've heard about despicable me. This word is still in prevalent, but despicable means shameful or morally wrong in a way. Discernment is the ability to judge things clearly or wisely. A lot of these words you'll probably recognize from Latin, but they're not common in English. Disdained, looked down on, or rejected with arrogance. Candor is honesty, sincerity, openness. I enjoy your candor. I enjoy your honesty. Gratified means pleased or satisfied. And vanity is excessive pride in herself or her opinions. Yes, you can still use prejudice in normal conversation. So, the original comment was she grew absolutely ashamed of herself. Oh, there it is. Of neither Darcy nor Wickham could she think. Without feeling, she had been blind, partial, prejudiced, and absurd. Not even an and, actually. It would be more natural with an and there. I feel like there's a bit of an and missing. How despicably I have acted, she cried. I who have prided myself on my discernment. I who have valued myself on my abilities, who have often disdained the generous candor of my sister and gratified my vanity in useless or blamable mistrust. I rewrote it in modern English. She felt completely ashamed of herself. She couldn't think about either Darcy or Wickham without realizing how wrong she'd been, how blind, biased, unfair, and ridiculous her judgments were. Oh, I've acted so badly, she cried. And to think I've always been proud of my ability to judge people well. I thought I was clever and insightful. I even looked down on my sister's kind and open-hearted nature. And I let my own ego feel satisfied by doubting people without good reason. So there you have it. Now, I will quickly say, if you have enjoyed tonight's lesson, if there's been a lot about connected speech and language and stuff like this, I do have a course. It's called the Ultimate British Pronunciation. Helpful if I could say it, doesn't it? It's called the Ultimate British Pronunciation Guide, and it's a course designed to help you learn a modern British RP accent. Now, soon it's going to be a subscription-only model. However, for the next few days, my wife has told me that we should mention to people if they join now, they will get lifetime access for the rest of their lives, or my life, actually. hopefully we both live a long time. But there's a lot to talk about on this course. It aims to teach you and improve your pronunciation. It's not about replacing who you are or anything like this, or it's about helping you pronounce things in a clear and professional way. And of course, it is about British English. But if this is of interest, please do check out the link that's going up now. There's a lot about me on there, including links to my main YouTube channel, the British English Lesson Library, lots of things. I hope so as well. I wish you the same. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for spending this lovely evening with me. It was a bit of a different one. I've done If before by Rudyard Kipling. I'm really glad that you enjoy that. Yeah, it's completely different. Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope so too. I decided to do this, so I wanted to kind of you are always welcome. I love doing literary analysis. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but this is something that we can talk about on the British English Lesson Library. If that's something you want, once a month, we can analyze a text or something like this, really get into it, maybe a chapter by chapter. But that's something we can talk about down the line. Have a lovely evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to be adding last week's class now to the community. I've also got to update the slang guide with a few things as well. But have a very lovely evening, and I will speak to you very, very soon. Take care, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Lots of love to you all. Have a lovely evening. And read some Jane Austen. It's pretty good.